Hello everyone. So today we are going to cover qualitative techniques in business research. Now, qualitative techniques in business research basically cover all those aspects of collecting and analyzing data where the emotions, perception, behavior, beliefs, attitude of people are involved. So basically, it's something that cannot be easily measured in numerical terms. It's not possible to measure someone's attitude, to measure someone's behavior directly. So that is what we are going to cover today. So in throughout this lecture, we're going to cover the approaches to qualitative research, the different methods of qualitative research, and how in today's time businesses are implementing these methods in order to be successful and in order to stay competitive with their competitors. So, first and the most important topic is the approach to a qualitative research. Now, what actually is an approach? So, basically, an approach is a way of adapting to something, a way of moving towards something. And it's actually thinking about how you have to conduct your qualitative research, because qualitative research is something about the feelings or the motivation, and it's all based on the real life situation, because this is what we encounter around our surroundings. So, our approaches are going to help us, or they're going to be the first step towards our qualitative research. Now, there are different approaches for different circumstances, and as we say, that not one shoe fits all. So, as per the situation, as per the need, we can apply these different approaches. Now, there are five most commonly used approaches. They're the grounded theory approach, the ethnography approach, the action research approach, the narrative research approach, and the phenomenological research. Now, we first move on to our grounded theory. The grounded theory, as the name suggests, grounded, that means that it's deeply rooted. The concept, the theory is already deeply rooted, it's already grounded. From the grounded scenario, we are going to collect the data and then we're going to analyze it. And based on the collection and the analyzation, then we're going to develop a new theory. So, ideally, there's something which is already deep rooted, and from that deep rooted step, we are going to form a new theory, a new development. So, for the theory development, we can either use an inductive approach or we can use a deductive approach. Mostly, inductive approaches are what are useful for grounded theory. Now, how actually is the data collected and analyzed here? So, there are different concepts, the different categories. So while the base is there, we're going to connect the dots, we're going to connect the concepts, the categories, identify them, and then build them into themes. Once we develop a relationship between them, we go on following the same process until and unless a relationship is formed between them. Once that relationship is formed, then we say that yes, our theory has been developed. Then we move on to the phenomenological study. Now, as it says phenomena, so here it follows those experiences that are actually lived by the respondents. It's something that they've lived, and we're going to hear them as they perceive it. We're going to listen to their side of the story. Now, for such a study, it is very, very important that that we bracket ourselves. Now, what does bracketing mean here? That let's assume if I am understanding the perception of my respondents, or if I'm conducting such a study on my respondents, it is very important that I keep my idea, my perception, my belief aside. Because if I have that kind of a perception, or if I have a certain kind of an attitude towards them, then in such a case, I'll not be able to give the honest opinion, or I'll not be able to judge them honestly. So for this, it's very, very important that bracketing is done. Again, once we have bracketed ourselves, we are going to move on to the phenomenological study. Now, as it says phenomena, so here it follows those experiences that are actually lived by the respondents. It's something that they've lived, and we're going to listen to their side of the story. Now, for such a study, it is very, very important that bracketing is done. Again, Every person, every respondent comes and tells their lived experiences or their side of the story or how they perceive a particular situation. Then all the data is collected and themes and patterns are developed. What commonalities are there? What are the reasons behind such a perception? What are the reasons behind such a belief or an attitude? And then the researcher ultimately tries to identify the meaning of the lived experience. Then comes the narrative research. Now, the narrative research is basically that you're narrating a story to someone. It's kind of a storytelling research method. In this case, we are going to again take the perspective of the storyteller. There can be a different situation, there can be a different belief. Someone has a setup, someone has a setback, a trauma, and their idea of a particular situation might be very different from the others. I might be scared of heights, and probably me jumping off or trekking might be very different from a person who loves hiking and trekking. So every person is going to narrate the story in their own terms, in their own ways. Now, what is the reason behind such a story, or why is one acting or behaving in such a manner, is what we study in the narrative research. So, actually, here the participants are going to construct a story from their own personal experience. And taking all this together, we're going to analyze it. Now, a very interesting concept here is the ethnographic research. Now, ethnographic actually covers culture, it covers geographical location. Now, why does it cover that? It basically means that in order to understand the people, in order to understand or gel up with them, you need to be a part of them. You need to be a part of their culture, their beliefs, their system, their attitudes, why they're reacting in such a way. So, ethnography can be defined as the systematic process of observing, detailing, describing, documenting, and analyzing the life ways or particular patterns of a culture or a subculture in order to grasp the life ways or patterns of the people in their familiar environment. So, we are going to study a certain group of people, their culture, their beliefs. We're going to observe them, we're going to understand them, describe them. We're also going to document them. Why? Because our field notes are very important. Our field notes are what are going to really help us in our documentation, in our analysis. And then, after we have everything ready, we're going to analyze the varied patterns. Why a certain group is of such an opinion? Why a certain group are feeling a certain pattern? So, ethnographic research, because of this reason, takes a lot of time. Because in order to understand someone's culture, someone's belief, that is a time consuming process. But it's a very interesting concept. It's a very interesting research method because one, the researcher gets to know how people live, how communicate, and how they communicate with each other. For this, the best way to identify is through interview and observations, because the more you ask them, the more you make them comfortable and ask questions to them, the more they'll be able to speak up freely to you, and that's how you'll be able to better understand that why they're behaving like that in a certain situation. So the aim here is to develop the cultural theories. You understand them and then you lead a path for it. So that's about ethnographic research. Now we have action research. Now, as we say action, so there is a need to take a certain action here. There is a need to devise a plan here. And how do we do that? We actually, it's also known as learning while living. So you're doing it and then you're also learning from it. So probably if we say that in a business a new concept, a new software has been introduced and you want to know what will be the perception or how they're going to understand it, so you implement a training program, you devise an entire strategy. New software, so that's your problem, you devise a solution for it, we conduct a training program. That's the action. We understand the behavior of the people. How are they reacting to the training program? So that's the action taking step. And based on all the reactions that we've received from our from our personnel, we actually take the action in the right direction. So this basically answers the how question of human behavior. How something is going to be done, how a plan is going to be devised, and how you're going to take action in the right direction. So this is basically a research method where you're linking the theoretical aspects to practical ones. So you're bringing that link, you're bridging the gap between the theory and the practice to bring about a change. That is what is action research. Now, based on these five approaches, we have the different types of qualitative research methods. Each approach might use one or more of the qualitative research method. So basically, our approach is the idea or is the first step towards our qualitative research as to how we're going to conduct it. But our qualitative research methods lead the way for them that okay, this approach can be conducted via interview, via observation, via understanding them through interviews. So that is what the qualitative research methods talk about. Some of the most common qualitative methods include interview, focus groups, ethnographic research, case study research, observations, and record keeping. Now, basically, the idea involved here is that the qualitative research methods they help to identify the perception of and behavior of the target audience regarding a particular topic. Perception and behavior interview. I'm interviewing you on one-to-one basis. I am able to judge where are you getting conscious, where are you speaking well, where are you confident, where are you comfortable, where are you not. That is going to give me an idea of how you perceive things in different scenarios. Maybe if I ask you a particular question, you're very comfortable with that, but if I ask you something else, you just fumble upon. And that's where I know that there is a reason behind it. And as a researcher, your task is to identify, make your respondent comfortable, and then get the best data out of them. So, our first and most important method is one to one interview. Even though time consuming, even though it's a lengthy process, but it gives you very, very effective results. Now, for an interview, it's very important to ask open ended questions. Open ended questions, we do structure our interviews. It's very important to have a base for the interview. But at the same time, you should ask open ended questions so that the respondent is able to answer more than a yes or a no. So, maybe asking, what are your thoughts about the new education policy? How do you think it will be implemented? Something like that is going to be an open ended question. You're not restricting your respondent towards answering a particular yes or a no or a maybe or a agree or a disagree. This way, the thoughts of the respondent are going to come out in a better way. Now, how are they useful? How are one to one interviews useful? Or how can you extract data or how can you analyze them? So basically, because you're asking a decent set of open ended questions, they will help you to gather the precise data about the thoughts, behavior, and the feelings. So, as I told you, that probably when I ask you about a particular question, you seem very comfortable. But if I ask you something else, which you might think is personal according to you, you might not feel comfortable. That is going to give me an idea about how you think, how you behave, and how you react to different situations. Not only this, it's not only the verbal communication that matters in one to one interviews, but in fact, the body language also speaks for itself. You might show a little resistance in case of certain questions, but you might be very enthusiastic in certain questions. So, even that might give an indication to the researcher about the data to be analyzed. Now, in terms of business and management, how a one to one interview is useful? So basically, today one to one interviews are not only face to face, but because of the pandemic, what we're witnessing is that even online, these one to one interviews are being held. So they can be either face to face, they can be either telephonic, but the aim is that one to one builds a better connection with the customer. So they help to better understand the customer and how the customer and the brand can connect, how they can build that loyalty, or how they can strengthen the bond between the customer and the brand. So an honest opinion about the brand and honest feedback about the brand is going to strengthen the relationship between the customer and ultimately the brand. Because if the customer feels that his or her opinion is being valued, his or her opinion is being taken into consideration, definitely that customer is going to buy again from you. Now, when to use this method? Because every time you can't indulge in a one to one interview. You're a business, you have a lot of customers, so probably it's not always feasible for you to opt for it. So, when actually should you use one to one interviews? So the ideal method is that when you want to identify something which is of a complex subject matter, something which cannot be easily identified over a survey or over a tick form or just over a checklist, and you actually want to know the opinion of your customer at that point of time, you can always go for the one-to-one interview. Apart from that, even when you require detailed information, so detailed information can mean, again, you just don't want the consumer to rate your product, but you also want to give the customer a chance for a proper feedback. You want to know that if I'm coming up with a new product, then would you like it or not? Would you like this size? Would you like that? What are the requirements that would suit you? So, where detailed information is required, there also one to one interviews serve better. And again, sensitive subject matters. When you're in a group or when you're just getting a survey, you might ignore a sensitive matter. You might not be comfortable in speaking about a sensitive matter. But when you're on a one to one interview, you're ensured, the interviewer ensures that you're made comfortable, that you're relaxed, and the questions are asked as per your needs, and the questions are molded so that you are not too sensitized towards that. So even where you feel that the customer is going to feel hurt or is going to be a little sensitive about it, at that point also one-to-one interviews are very useful. Now for an interview to be successful or for the entire method to be successful, there are two parties involved, the interviewer and the interviewee. The interviewee will respond to your questions only if the interviewer possesses the right amount of qualities. If the interviewer is not making you comfortable, is not asking the right questions, is not experienced enough, is not molding the questions as per your reactions, then the result, the outcome of this method is not going to be fruitful. So, in order to be successful with the kind of data that you're collecting, the interviewer must be skilled and experienced, must have some expertise in the area of the questions that he or she is going to ask, should have complete knowledge about the subject. It shouldn't be that one is going and asking the interviewee about questions that that person is completely unaware of. So it's very important that you have prior knowledge of the subject. Apart from this, basic personality traits, like you have to be a good listener, you have to be very, very cooperative, you have to be patient, you have to be polite, you have to mold the answers, you have to mold the questions accordingly, you have to understand the reactions, you have to make the interviewee comfortable. So these are the basic personality traits that you must possess, that an interviewer must possess. And lastly, what techniques can you use in a one-to-one interview? So there are three basic techniques that we have: an unstructured interview, where there is not a defined set of questions; a semi-structured interview. Some are defined, some you leave it based on the situation. A structured interview, where everything is set or everything is pre-decided. So, as per the subject matter, you can select the interview technique that is most applicable in your case. Now, the second method is focus groups. Now, as one to one interview was just catering to one person at a time, the next step is to move from that single person to a group of at least 5 to 10 participants. Ideally, we consider a focus group of 8 persons to be apt, because in such a case, neither there are two less participants that you're only going to, base your judgment on their opinions, and neither there are too many participants that the respondents don't get a chance to speak. So ideally, 8 is considered to be an apt number. Now, what actually happens in a focus group? You bring about a group of people from a selected area, and on a selected topic, you ask them to discuss. Now, because they're from the similar background, or they're from the same area or the same subject, they're able to better give their opinions, they're able to better voice their concerns and opinions. So, for a focus group, the topic is already pre decided. You bring them all together and then you start your discussion. This discussion is going to help you in finding out why, what, and how of the human behavior. The business is launching a new product. Do you think this product is going to be successful? How should the product be implemented? How should it be marketed? Why these ingredients should be used? Why should we go for non-cruelty products? What is it that is instilling you to buy a product? So they basically cater to the why, what, and how questions of human behavior. Now, again, they're suitable for complex processes, something which you can easily find out through a survey or through an easier approach is not the focus of a focus group. Here, the intention is to gather information about those topics which are relatively complex, which require people to come together and raise their opinion. A new product is being launched. So let's assume Maggie is coming with a new product. It brings about a focus group, asks which flavors are people going to buy the most? What is it that you like about it the most? Testing of new concepts. It brings about it new flavors and makes the people test it. What are their opinions on that? So that is what happens in a focus group. But even for a focus group, there have to be certain key considerations that one has to keep in mind. When you're bringing the people together, the topic should be such that should interest both the investigator and the respondents, because a healthy interaction, a healthy discussion is going to come from the point where both investigator and respondents interact. They feel happy about the interaction, they want to talk about it more. So definitely the selection of the candidates, the selection of the respondents have to be very carefully planned, because if the topic is not of interest, you're not going to get any fruitful results. Then, not only this, a moderator is very important. When you have a group of 5 to 10 people, you need someone to moderate. And a moderator should be one who should be able to give each respondent his due time to indulge, to engage in the discussion. It should not be that the focus is only on one person, because that's not going to give you any result. If it's a focus group, voice, opinion, beliefs of everyone shall be heard equally. And that is the reason why a trained moderator is important. Apart from this, before you bring the group together, you should have a base, you should have a guideline in your mind so as to how you want to proceed with the focus group. Some structuring, some detailing has to be done prior to the initiation of the discussion. So, keeping these considerations in mind, a focus group can be best suited where you want to know the results of people quickly. So, instead, like unlike a one to one interview here, 8 people simultaneously coming together, you're knowing their opinion. So, that is relatively a quicker way than one to one interview. The third method is ethnographic research. Now, as we've covered this in the approach also, ethnographic basically focuses on your culture. It focuses on location, how people are in a certain location, or let's say employees of A Limited. How are they actually reacting, or how are they different from employees of B Limited? When you become an employee of A Limited, when you settle in their culture, when you understand their beliefs and customs, that is when you're going to understand why they have a certain opinion. So, ethnographic research in itself is a very in depth method because here it's not something that's just going to happen in 1 hour discussion or half an hour discussion. It's a very time consuming process and it may last from few days to few years if you want to understand someone's culture deeply. Because ideally, this concept dates back to way back, and at that point of time, the main focus of such a research was to understand the deep culture in a particular society. So that's why we say that it's a time consuming process because it can last from a few days to a few years. Now, the aim of an ethnographic research is to study the individual in their naturally occurring environment. The individuals are very happy living their lives. You go in their environment, you go how they're living, and try to understand their culture, their motivation, their opinions, their attitudes, and their challenges. So, from the point of business, ethnographic research is important. Why? Because you are going to create a product which is going to suit the needs of your customer. If you're unable to understand their likes, dislikes, their tastes, preferences, their attitudes, beliefs, their culture, or if you disrespect their culture or their beliefs, they're not going to buy your products. So, in order to understand, ethnographic research proves very, very beneficial. And in today's time, because of the stiff competition that every firm is facing, the marketers really need to gear up in terms of understanding their customers in the best possible manner. Now we move on to the case study research. Now, case study research is a very common method that all of us are aware of. Now, in case study research, mostly we've seen this in the education sector or the social sciences where a certain case study is given and you have to give your idea of the case study. What do you think about an already occurring event or an already happened event? So, this method helps you to understand how the respondent is reacting or is perceiving that situation. And based on their answers, you infer your data. So, case study ultimately provides multifaceted exploration of complex issues. Why multifaceted? Because you can ask anything in your case study. Your case study can ask about healthcare, it can ask about education, it can ask about business, marketing, management. You want to know the opinion, you want to give them a case, an already defined case, something that's happened, and then you want to see how they are reacting to it, or what is their opinion, or what is their understanding of that case. Through that understanding, you can analyze, you can pick up the points that are relevant to your business, that are relevant to you as a manager. So, probably employee policies. If you give your employees a working paper, a case study to study what policies are being followed, you might see some might give a positive feedback, some might not. You pick what is relevant, what is keeping your employees happy, and based on that, you design your policies. So, that's how a case study research method is very important. Then we move on to the record keeping method. Now, as the term suggests, record keeping. So, here you're not directly going to a new method, you're not directly taking something new. The data here is already existing in the records. It can be in the form of audio, it can be in the form of visuals, it can be audio, visual, pictorial, anything, but text. But the records are already there in the database. So, what are you actually doing with the record keeping method? In the record keeping method, you are using the existing reliable documents. It's very similar to the concept of literature review. When we see literature review, we study the existing literature that has been done by the researchers in the past, and based on those, we try to find out the gaps and then base our new study. Exactly in the same manner, for record keeping, we use the existing reliable documents and sources of information, and based on those sources of information, then we use them in our new research. We use them to find something new. So it's very similar to a library. Everything is stocked up, everything is available. What resources are you able to extract, and how are you able to analyze them, is what is the key point here. And then we have the qualitative observation. Now, as the term observation suggests, you're just going to observe, you're just going to see how people are reacting, how people are behaving. So, when I talk about the term qualitative observation, the importance of sensory organs are very important. How I see, how I hear, how I feel someone is doing. So that is very, very important here. Now, for qualitative observation, because the main method here is just observing. So you see something what one has already witnessed. I'm sitting here observing 10 students in my classroom. I'm teaching a particular paper and I'm seeing each of them reaction. How are they reacting to them? Someone might be very quick in solving, someone might not. So if I have to understand each student personally, then I am witnessing them. I'm seeing how they're reacting, how they're seeing, how they're hearing, are they listening to me or not, and how they're functioning overall. Based on that, I make my field notes. Now, in this case, field notes are very important. You can't be overly writing every little thing, but you should make the right amount of field notes in this method, because it's important to note how a particular person is reacting to what you're saying. You are trying to identify the behavior of a particular person, and based on that information, based on that behavior, you will be able to gather your information. Now, the benefit here is that everything is first hand. You're just seeing and you're just making your notes. In this case, you are measuring the characteristics, but you're not measuring the numbers. Why not numbers? I can't say that person A has, I can just rate person A as 1. No, I can say that person A is shy, person A is polite, person A is active, but I can't say that person A is rated as 2, 3, or 4. So here you measure the characteristics rather than the numbers. So again, when you're there in a group, qualitative observation is important. Here also, there are certain key considerations that you have to keep in mind. Firstly, whenever you move on to this method, whenever you opt observation as your method, you always have certain research objectives. As in, what is it that you're trying to find? What is it that you're trying to observe? So, based on your research objectives, certain issues that you want to observe should always be prepared in advance. Second is goal oriented. When you're observing, don't divert, don't shift from your focus. Your goal should be such that you observe what you want to. Over observing or under observing, both are not correct here. Because if you're under observing, you're not getting what you want. And if you're over observing, what you want to achieve somewhere gets lost in that track. Then It's very important to have a second opinion or to take inputs from those who are valued in the same field. So, if they are familiar observers, then it's always better to take their inputs. And lastly, just don't aim at observing what they're trying to say. Even focus on the non-verbal communication. Even focus on the kind of situation that they're in and their reaction towards that. So, keeping these considerations into mind, an effective qualitative observation can be used as a method. Now, all these approaches and the subsequent methods can be applied in business. In fact, in today's time, they are very much applied in every little aspect of the business. First, understanding buyers' trend. Today, we talk about sustainable fashion. Are people going to buy a lot or are people going to restrict themselves from buying? You want to understand their trend. In order to understand their trend, you may go for a focus group, you may go for a survey, you may go for a one to one interview. So, if you see the social media platforms today, every time you open Facebook or you open a certain social media, it will give you a short survey. Which brand, which product do you use? And then it will give you four options. So they're trying to know the brand choice, the brand identification. Then new product launch and testing. Again, a very, very important factor from the business point of view. If you're coming up with a new product, you can't take the risk of blindly entering into the market with excessive competitors. The important task here is that you understand your customers beforehand. Are they even going to like your product? Is it what the customers are looking at? You can just ask open-ended questions to them, something like, are you interested in buying this product? Or in fact, more open-ended questions, what are your thoughts about this product? Is it a product that or how are you going to describe the features of this product? So, testing and new product launch, even before coming on, even before entering the market, you just test your product in a short sample, and that is going to help you to identify the loopholes. If there are certain elements that the people are not liking, you can make amends in your product, you can make amends in your marketing strategies, and then go ahead with that. Job analysis. You have a company, you're finding an employee or there are employees in your organization, you want to know which employee will suit you best. So if you look up today, there are a lot of personality traits tests that you will find on the internet. What do they help? They help you to fit into the right category of job that you're meant with. Understanding customer needs and behaviors. You see one product today, and then you see that there are thousands of similar products existing in the market. How as a business are you going to create an edge over your competitors? You need to very carefully understand what are the needs, what are the behaviors, what are the tastes and preferences of your customers. You can't identify them by numeric terms easily. You need to know the perception, you need to know the attitude, the belief of the customer. And that is why qualitative research methods are very important here. Productivity enhancement. You want your employees to work better, to show a higher productivity. How are you going to do it? You understand from them, you ask them, what is it that they're holding back? Is there any concern that they're holding back? What is it that makes them happy? What is it that they want to be improved? What are the feedback from their point of view? If you are able to attain, if you are able to achieve a positive feedback and an honest feedback from your employees and you implement them in your policies subsequently, definitely your productivity is going to be enhanced. Sales analysis. Why my sales are going up or why there's a downward trend in my sales. Why during the pandemic we've seen a surge in shopping, or why during the pandemic certain products have gained importance, whereas certain products have completely taken a seat back. If you're facing a downward trend, you need to come up with a strategy. You need to identify what are the reasons for that. What is it that the customers are disliking about your product? And if your sales are increasing, your task is to again engage with your customers so as to know how should you retain that upward trend, how you can still go on increasing your sales. Advertising. We see a lot of promotions, a lot of money being spent on promotions today. Why? Because at a lot of times, if you like something in the first glance, you're able to, you'll just end up buying it. What should be in an advertisement that instantly attracts the customers? So, your ad should be made in such a way that it keeps into mind your target audience, their interest, their likeliness, and their beliefs. So, if your business is, you're coming up with a product which is suitable for the age group of 8 to 12 years, so you come up with something interesting. You come up with a cartoon in your ad. You come up with something that a toy in your ad, something which suddenly attracts the child, and they're motivated to buy it. Similarly, if you're looking for something like a job profile, so you show the ad accordingly. Advertisement today is a very, very powerful tool of promotion, and the right implementation, the right understanding of the needs of your target audience will definitely give you a boost in your sales. Brand perception. How your customers perceive your brand. Apple. Now, the moment I say Apple, everybody treats it like a luxury brand. How today Apple has reached at that stage where it's treating itself as a luxury brand? What do people perceive of different brands? How is your image in front of your customers, or how do they mirror your brand? So, setting across the right perception in the minds of the consumers is very important. If they have a positive perception, if they have a positive attitude towards your brand, they are going to buy your product. In case it's not, then you will be sufferers of negative publicity. So it's very important that what is it that's lacking behind, or what is it that's acting as a boost to your business. Because if something is lacking behind or something is missing, then you have to identify that missing factor and rectify it. And on the other hand, if something is acting as a boost to your business, then you have to retain that, because that's the essential part of your business and that's what's keeping you going. So, brand perception, for identification of such brand perception, also, you can use varied methods. You can use a blend of interview, of focus groups, of ethnographics, and that's how you reach the best possible solution for your business. And lastly, evaluation of promotions. Now, again, as I told you, that promotion is in itself a very powerful tool. And today, sales are lot to a lot of extent they're actually dependent on promotions, how well you're promoting your brand. So since there are so many options available for promotion also, you have email marketing, you have videos, you have reels, coming up with influencers, you're coming up with celebrity endorsements, because there are so many options available to you. What option is giving you the maximum results can also be analyzed during through the qualitative research methods. So you ask your customers, how did you know about our brand, or where did you see our brand, or how are you making a purchase? Was it referred to you by your relatives? Was it through an ad that you saw on social media platform? Was it that you saw a TV ad, or you heard it on the radio? So you identify which promotional method has been most suitable for you. And based on that, you put on the right track as to this is the place where you want to invest more. These are actually just a glimpse of, or these are just a glimpse of the areas where the businesses are using qualitative research methods. In reality, this list is way more exhaustive. There are a lot of areas, in fact, may it be firm with regard to your employees, may it be your customers, at every stakeholder point. These applications, these qualitative research methods, these approaches are used. Why? Because customer is ultimately the king of the market. And your task as in business, as in management, is to keep your stakeholders happy. So if you're not able to understand your stakeholders well, somehow you'll never be able to reach at the level that you want to. You'll never be able to succeed at that level. And that is the importance of the approach and the varied methods. Thank you.